Good morning. I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about the Integral Institute and Ken Wilber and my experience with that group, my experience attending events, reading all of the books, and how it affected me. I made a post maybe a couple months ago now from this book. It was just a quote. This is the Integral Life Practice. And I realize it's backwards because I have my phone forward facing. I apologize. But it's just called the Integral Life Practice, a 21st century blueprint for physical health, emotional balance, mental clarity, and spiritual awakening. And it's Ken Wilber with Terry Patton, Adam Leonard, and Marco Morelli. And it's a good book. It has great information. It's well worth the time it would take for you to read it and consider some of the concepts put forth. Now, what was my experience and what drew me to this group? I was introduced to Ken Wilber in Powell's Bookstore, which is in Portland, Oregon. It's pretty famous. It's an awesome book. If you're into books, that's the place for you. It is incredible. You can spend a week in there and not get everything you want to get out of it. There's so much there. Anyway, I was in there and I was in the section, self-development section, and then remember, this is the 1990s, so 98, 99, somewhere in there, and I'm looking at all the different books, and there's a book by Ken Wilber, and I thought, never heard of this guy. I start flipping through it, and immediately the things he's saying resonate. He's talking about mental fitness, physical fitness, emotional fitness, spiritual fitness. He's talking about these things in a way that makes sense to me, particularly at that time. I'm on a journey trying to understand how to incorporate everything that I'm learning and doing. Remember, I'm a new police officer, so I'm a rookie. I just started on the job, and I'm coming from a background of where I was doing martial arts, Muay Thai, boxing, jiu-jitsu, judo, wrestling. I'm doing all these things on a daily basis, in addition to fitness and lifting weights and running sprints and all this stuff. And I'm doing all this stuff every day. And now I'm trying to figure out how to bridge the gap between my empty hands and the weapons. How do I incorporate the weapon? How do I incorporate different aspects of my toolkit that I've been assigned? How do I do all that? Like, how do I put it together? And also, the lessons that I'm hearing taught at the police academy and in different classes that I'm being sent to, where they're talking about mindset, they're talking about this never give up, officer survival type stuff, and also just officer survival in the long term, which is how do you see just some of the most heinous things, the most abnormal things you can imagine, and then act normally. How do you see these things and then not go down, spiral out, and go into a space where you start to see everyone as a criminal and you see everyone as bad? And how do you keep it all in perspective? And I'm looking at all of these things, and with a background pretty deep in theology and study of different spiritual practices, and always being a amateur philosopher, I guess we could call it, where I was just always thinking about how do I live my life? What is the code? What is the ethics? What's causing me to do these things, and why do I do these things, and my purpose? All the things that Ken Wilber was talking about in this book resonated. I bought it, immediately dove deep, and as I do with everything, I went all in. I bought all of the books, every Ken Wilber book I could find. If I could find an interview, I read it. If I could find an event, I attended. And I got a lot of benefit from it. I learned a lot. It helped me to understand that the difference between how do we define the line between mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical, when if I'm having a bad day mentally, it affects my emotions, which affects my physical state, which probably affects my spiritual state. All these different things, they're all blended together in some way. They're all overlapping in some sort of weird Venn diagram. And there were so many things where it hit me. That's how I've always thought. I just never knew how to to verbalize it. I never knew how to explain it. And so that was my experience. That was what drew me to it, rather, not my experience, but that's what drew me to it. My experience with the group was majority positive. It was only in recent times where I would run into the things like, oh, you're a police officer, we're going to need you to leave because people don't feel safe with you here. And why? Like, what is there to be afraid of? And it just, interesting things like that started to happen. And I realized quickly that maybe we've outgrown each other. You guys are moving in a different direction than what I'm moving. And so I distanced myself from all of it. Although in practice, I still have a daily holistic practice. I still have an integrated practice where I'm trying to integrate all levels, all quadrants. I am doing my best to create oneness within myself and with what I do, and also with the people that I train. I put a lot of effort into helping them to understand that the physical is how we tap into the mental and the emotional and the spiritual, that by forcing ourselves to go beyond what we perceive our limitations to be, we actually grow mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And the simplest way to do that is through the physical. And one of the things that Ken Wilber said one time that really struck me was, he said, you're never more in the now than when you're under a heavy barbell and nothing else exists in that moment except bringing that thing back up, lifting that thing from wherever you lowered it to back to standing or back to full extension, whatever the case may be. And that really struck a chord with me and spoke to where I was and my experiences. You're never more in the moment than when you are in those hard miles and you're just banging it out, just grinding it out. You're never more in the moment than those moments. Nothing else exists. Nothing else is happening except putting one foot in front of the other and just working. Just keep moving. Don't stop. And so those are the benefits. Those are the things that I think people could get from the books. And I think it's beneficial to read the books and listen to the lectures and all that stuff. I do think there's benefit in that. I think there's a lot to be learned. And I also think too that there are a lot of people who have figured out that everything is one. So physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, everything is one, and they are all tied together. You know, the Misogis, the marathon monks in Japan, and by Misogi, the action of a Misogi. All those things people have discovered through doing those things. And when Aristotle coined the word eudaimonia, that's when those guys knew that the way to unite everything, at least in the beginning, is through intense physical effort. And that was one of the things that I felt like the Integral Institute folks put some emphasis on when I first began to read Ken Wilber's stuff and his books. I thought I would share that with you guys, a little history for y'all on where I came from and the various things that you might see me post about and share, and kind of the genesis of where I am, what got me started to where I am today. All right, guys, I appreciate you. I will see you tomorrow. Have an amazing, epic Saturday. Go do some epic shit, man. If you're off today and you can, go do something that just amazes you. Impress yourself. All right, man. Have a good one.